Welcome, everyone, to our next webinar and a part of our webinar series for 2026. Today, we'll be looking at how you can solve challenges in schools and universities, right? So we have an exciting presentation here with a special guest to guide you through the process of what's worked for him, what didn't work for him, and some key takeaways that you can implement and put to use in your network right away. So without further ado, let's see who's joining us on today's webinar.
Yeah, thanks, Troy. So you've got myself and Troy here looking after product marketing and ECSE, and we have Stu and Dale is going to be managing the chat and the Q&A. But the special guest and star of the show, and also a good friend of the Ekahau webinar series, is Larry. So Larry, welcome to joining us as a presenter on the webinar today. Thank you for joining us. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm excited. I'm nervous. I'm ready to go.
You don't need to be nervous. We've seen the content you prepared. I know it's going to be absolutely fabulous. So looking forward to that indeed. And yeah, I just want to apologize to people because I'm at the mercy of hotel Wi-Fi, and I've got my little speed test pulse device here. Just done a little check, and the Wi-Fi is actually pretty good, but it's actually something to do with the connectivity elsewhere that's causing me some intermittent issues to drop in and out. So I'll probably be off camera and off talking for a bit today, and leave you in the safe hands of Larry and Troy.
Thanks, Matt. And before we get right into the heart of the presentation, just a quick reminder, and you can scan the QR codes to make your lives easier to connect to this. But we do have a public Slack channel that's available where you can have a lot of discussions about Ekahau products, designs that you're working on, surveys that you're working on, venting about projects that you've been on, and customer conversations that you might have just gone through. All right, so feel free to check out the public Slack group, right? Also, we are very keen to hear feedback on our product, right? So features that you'd like to see added, things that are working, things that aren't working for you. If you submit your feedback via this portal here, it goes directly to our product developers, right? Gives them insight to how products are being used in the field, right? So again, scan these QR codes or check out the Slack group or head over to the website ekahau.uservoice.com and provide that feedback. So as part of the campus environment, when we look at universities and schools, there's a lot of uniqueness to this vertical, right? And Larry's going to dive into a lot of the specific challenges that he's encountered. But to set kind of the stage and the context for this, right, as part of a larger campus setup, you have multiple buildings that have probably been built over different eras, right? So different construction standards, construction techniques, the architects coming up with different aesthetic visions using different types of wood and metal and stonework to put that building together. Right. We see more and more students show up on campus with additional devices, right? Filling auditorium rooms. I don't know if you remember, it was several years ago now, they showed that picture that sometimes the auditorium's empty and it's just a bunch of, laptops sitting on a desk recording the presentation from the professor who's left their laptop behind to broadcast and stream their presentation, right? So essentially, everyone's walking around with multiple devices showing up in sometimes small classrooms or large auditoriums. And with the openness of higher education, we want to allow everyone to bring in any device that they want. So there's a whole mix of different devices, which presents challenges because you as a wireless administrator have to support all of those devices that any student could bring in. Being based in Canada, the university I went to, it got pretty cold in winter, minus 40 degrees, and we had a little bowl area, which was a lovely a grass section, which was fantastic in summer to sit outside, hang out with your friends, throw the ball around, connect over Wi-Fi. But generally, school ran through the fall and through winter. Not a lot of people playing on the internet outside, right? So good tip, pick your university accordingly so that you can have nice sunny days where you can hang out outside. And it's super useful to have integrated spectrum analyzers built into your wireless tool sets that allow you to identify rogue APs and non-Wi-Fi interferers that show up in various areas of your campus, right? This is particularly a challenge often you get into some of those, the physics labs, engineering labs, we're doing a lot of research, some of those electronic devices emitting a lot of weird interferes. I've even seen psychology wings, right? Where they're doing random tests, where they're zapping rats with the electrodes, and they emit, spurious types of electromagnetic radiation, right? So a lot of different challenges as part of the university environment, and we're going to have Larry run this through us, or run us through the more details of what it's like to deploy Wi-Fi in a university and campus environment. Right. So
Absolutely.
as part of this, to set the stage for Larry, he comes from the Northern Arizona University. Right. Some pictures here of the university campus. And I know Larry's going to kind of do an overview of his university, his situation here. This is just a reference marker here. I'm going to stop sharing momentarily here, and we'll hand the slide deck over to Larry, and he'll walk you through the slides and the presentation that he's prepared to share his experiences, his insights, and what he's found deploying Wi-Fi at the university here.
All right. So thank you for that introduction, guys. I do appreciate being here. Hello, my fellow sidekicks. My name is Larry Urueta, and I'm a senior network engineer for Northern Arizona University. I'm super excited to be here and truthfully honored to share the stage with many great wireless experts I've taken before to share with you content. I'm hoping you'll find the content interesting, and I'm hoping that I'll leave you with some tips that you can hopefully deploy in your organization that can help improve the wireless connectivity. So just a quick slide about me. I'm originally from El Paso, Texas. I moved over to Arizona about 20 years ago, and I worked in Phoenix, Arizona for a cable provider for a short stint before coming to the university. And whenever I'm not troubleshooting wireless issues, I'm usually out enjoying the outdoors, going on hikes with my dog and my wife. And yeah, that's just a quick little bit about me. I will say that I started my career off as a traditional route switch network engineer, but I've always had a passion for wireless. And so the university had a position available for a wireless network engineer. And boy, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. So but we'll talk about that. So uh, Northern Arizona University, for those of you that may not be familiar, is one of the three main universities for the state of Arizona. Our larger sister universities include Arizona State University and the University of Arizona. And we're about an hour away from the Grand Canyon. The city of Flagstaff is actually surrounded by the Coconino National Forest. So, for those of you that may not be familiar with Northern Arizona, there's lots of trees. We do get snow. We do get cold weather. We're not like, what you probably picture in your mind as a desert or the hot temperatures that you might find in Phoenix, Arizona. As kind of Troy mentioned, I have a couple topics I would like to share with you today. We'll talk about our wireless deployment. I'll share some of our challenges working in a university environment, and we'll talk about some of my favorite tools from the Ekahau toolkit, um, and how we use it in classrooms and for designing and capacity planning and troubleshooting interference. And then hopefully I'll end the slides with some best practices that you guys uh, can review. So, again, as you kind of saw on the previous slide, the Northern Arizona campus is about 883 acres and consists of a wide variety of different types of buildings. And I think, for those of us that are working in these types of environments, it's for those that may not be familiar in these types of environments, it's a small city unto itself. We have, our own services from, hospitals to police departments to our own transit services. And so it's a perfect meshing of all the different types of wireless designs that you may come across, you know, in your career or it may be in some of the in your jobs today. Bridging in, if you guys recall from the previous webinar, hospitality, in our residence space, and then kind of more of like the enterprise type of wireless connectivity in our academic space. We have about 375 classrooms across campus, which can make things a bit challenging as it relates to, dense environments. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in the next few slides. But classrooms, we're seeing an increased demand in the utilization of wireless for classrooms as it relates to, how instructors engage with students and their curriculum. But we'll talk a little bit more about that in the next slide. We're primarily a Cisco shop. We have close to almost 3,700 access points and from a wide variety of generations. We deploy a centralized deployment or an on-premise controller centralized deployment, I should say, as opposed to kind of a cloud type of deployment. And it's our team that, supports everything from the wireless edge or the wired edge all the way out to the internet. So our team is responsible for maintaining and managing the wireless network and all the infrastructure that in between, which is kind of important. For our university, we actually broadcast several wireless networks, which pretty much breaks down to just being the authenticated and the unauthenticated, as well as an eduroam SSID, which many universities might be familiar with, is a shared eduroam between universities that allow guests to be able to leverage. And I kind of want to just point out for our enterprise wireless network, we actually don't utilize passphrases to connect to our wireless. We use username and passwords for an enterprise type of security. So we leverage things like, an NMS or Cisco ICE Identity Service Engine to be able to authenticate some of our users. And we have both. We'll talk a little bit more about this later on, but we have both WPA3 and WPA2 deployed in our organization, as well as OWE. So I've over the course of working here and attending some of these webinars and conferences, I've slowly started to kind of deploy newer technologies out in the field, and it's been working great. So I'll give you guys some more tips and tricks on that, and why you maybe want to do that in your organization, but I can't recommend it enough. And while we are still a smaller university by our bigger sister universities, we still have on average around 30,000 wireless devices that are mixed between, as Troy kind of mentioned earlier, a mixture of NAU-owned assets, laptops, desktops that you would expect in an enterprise, but also, BYOD devices, IoT devices from like researchers and all the different activities that we have going around campus. So it's a really diverse wireless deployment, and I think the big takeaway here is, you just got to be accommodating to all the various wireless devices that you may come across working in this type of setting. But it's also kind of fun to actually work on in this type of at this type of scale, because you get to see a little bit of different markets, as far as like the wireless in a hospital as well as in a residential space where students live. It definitely keeps things interesting and fresh for sure. And again, as Troy mentioned, some of the challenges that we face include a wide variety of different types of buildings, but also the materials and structures that those buildings were constructed with. So I'll show you in a minute here one of our oldest buildings on campus. But when you're going through and thinking about design, you definitely want to take into account the type of materials that you're designing around or designing for. And in a university like this, we have everything from, really modern type of architecture to really old architecture. And I think this kind of speaks to, some of the limitations that you have to work around as far as aesthetics goes. I saw somebody in the chat mention asbestos. That's kind of my third bullet point there. These are all things you got to be mindful of when you're creating a deployment or refreshing a deployment in one of these buildings, is you don't want to create or accidentally, expose people to any kind of, hazardous material. And then, of course, we have multi-floor buildings. So you get to practice and play with just placement of access points, working with your installers and trying to figure out, what deployment works best as it relates to like a stack deployment versus a salt and pepper type of deployment. Some of these terms you may or may not be familiar with, but my next slide will hopefully help you guys learn out how you can find out more about some of these terms that I might be using today. Um, and then, of course, students have a tendency of bringing all of their devices with them when they come to live on campus. And at the end of the day, they just expect them to work. Kind of going back to, what's the difference between an enterprise versus a personal type of wireless deployment? Personal deployment, you'll have your traditional just PSK, security and passphrase for authenticating wireless devices. But in an enterprise, it's a little bit more complex, as you're leveraging like radius and other, enterprise grade type of level security, which devices tend not to like and have difficulty associating with. And that's kind of speaks to why, in my previous slide, we have different types of SSIDs that we can do some interesting things, but also ensure that we're able to provide our students with, the ease of onboarding those types of devices, so that we also kind of, by doing that, create a separation for as it relates to security. Um, So I'll showcase a little bit of our more high dense, areas, including classrooms and auditoriums and stadiums, and give you guys some tips on maybe, how you can leverage the Ekahau toolkit to troubleshoot or design for those types of environments. And we have a little bit of which are present their own challenges, mind you, but we also have we struggle with life cycle management, as many of you know, working in a university environment. Things go a little slower here. We don't have the big budgets that some of the public sector or private sector companies have to work with. So we do our best with just making sure that we're constantly, upgrading our equipment to make sure that we're providing the best wireless connectivity for our students, because at the end of the day, we're here for them, and we want to make sure we prioritize the connectivity, especially as it relates to learning and how they engage with the wireless on campus. But all of these bullet points coming together, at the end of the day, the expectation is that the wireless must work. And it can be difficult at times, considering the scale, considering the types of devices that we have control over or the lack thereof. And it's truly a challenging environment to design for and support. But the key thing to note is that you need to have the right tools. And that's where the Ekahau Sidekick kind of complements our team and our group in being able to solve a lot of those problems. So I I have an admission to make. I mentioned earlier that I originally was a route switch type of network engineer that joined the campus. I had a little bit of wireless experience, but I had no idea what I was getting myself into when I first joined the campus. Um, I, I was listening to a talk from Tom Carpenter recently, revisiting a webinar that he had actually talked about the concept of imposter syndrome or phenomenon. And I totally felt that joining the university when I first started, not realizing, how much we had to manage and design for and support. But having a good understanding of the fundamentals and having, a good training has definitely taken me from zero to hero. And I stand before you today, uh, very, well versed now and comfortable in my ability to speak on these topics because of things like the ECSC training course. I had the luxury of being able to take both courses, the design and troubleshooting, and I can't recommend them enough. The instructors are phenomenal. Shout out to my instructors there. If you've hopefully joined the webinar. And if not, I'm hoping, please pass the word along, because you'll learn things from, about like what is an LCMI. You'll learn things about like the game, the state machine, all of these things that really do help you understand um, how to design for and support a wireless network. And in the troubleshooting session, for those more advanced and wanting to learn more, I personally love looking at packet captures and leveraging the AI Pro tool to be able to design or validate and do surveys in our different types of deployments to ensure that we are providing the best wireless for our students. Um, but if you're not able to attend these trainings, I still can't recommend enough attending these webinars. As I mentioned, these attending these webinars, reaching out to the community, joining the Slack channel, these are things that have really helped my career and made me feel, comfortable in being able to speak on these terms, you know, intelligently. So, if they definitely take advantage of the Slack channel that they showed earlier. You'll find me there, and there's lots of great questions where people are asking, and the community is so giving and so willing to help that I can't understate how awesome the wireless community is. So if while you're also designing, if you're not able to attend those webinars and you want maybe more of like a custom one-to-one, tips and tricks, there are other tools that you can leverage, including, the optimizer and the insight tools from the Ekahau Suite toolkit that will guide you and being able to make adjustments and improvements to even existing, deployments. So I highly recommend leveraging those if you're not able to make it out to the conferences or the webinars or attend some of these trainings. But I can't recommend them enough. So, all right. I guess for this slide, I kind of wanted to showcase a little bit of the tools that I recommend and use on a daily basis. And what I really love about the Sidekick is just how accessible it is, how easy it is to just pick up a tablet and your Sidekick 2 and just go out into the field, collect meaningful data, and or bring it back for analysis, right? Just being able to go and do a survey or do a packet capture using the 4 radios that are in the Sidekick. It makes it so easy just to get to, diagnosing problems as opposed to trying to figure out how are you going to collect that data? How are you going to get that visibility? So obviously I use the AI Pro Online for designing and validation for surveys. The Analyzer app, I'll show you in the next screenshot here or slide that the network overview is a really great tool to just be able to walk into a space and just capture the wireless environment in one single pass. Just being able to see what the channels are doing, what the utilization's like, what type of wireless is deployed. Really, really awesome. So I'll show you that in just a second here. The client analysis tool, super awesome for being able to just detect what features are supported on some of your LCMI devices, which I don't think I defined, which LCMI stands for least capable, most important device. Things that you'll learn in the actual course, in the ECSC training course. And those are the types of devices that you want to be designing for in your wireless deployment. I will mention that at least for a university, that is a rarity for us to be able to at least identify a specific device that we're designing for because of just the types of devices in our environment, though we do try and at least, design our wireless networks so that they're accommodating for all devices. I think that's what kind of separates us from other markets and other types of wireless deployments. But
Hey, Larry,
yes, sir.
could you provide an example of a device that you've narrowed down and identified as an LCMI that you'd specifically designed for? Do you have an example of that?
Um, I want to say no, just because typically we're working with like laptops and desktops, but I do have like a demo where I showcase how you would use the client analysis tool to be able to take just any wireless device in an environment, like a television or some sort of um, wireless router or something, and you can identify that device, see what kind of like features it supports and what it's capable of, so that then you can kind of go back to your design and either accommodate for those types of things. I've not been ever approached by an instructor or a student saying, "Hey, this particular device." Or yeah, we need to design for this type of device in this environment. However, I will say that if you're trying to troubleshoot and you want to kind of identify like why is this client not connecting to our wireless network, it's a great way of being able to tell what standards it supports as it relates to like 802.11r or 802.11k, and uh, maybe as a troubleshooting tool that might actually be beneficial. And if you create a design where you have a feature enabled like that, and then you find that clients are not able to connect. That's kind of more like the troubleshooting angle that we would take. But
Cool.
great question. Packet analysis, like I said, is just easy to pick up the Sidekick, grab a packet capture, come back and try to put on your Peter McKenzie hat and try to figure things out. I'm not an expert in it. I'm still learning a lot about it, but great to be able to leverage the tool. And something that closely associates with being able to detect like interference across campus, the spectrum analysis tool is so easy to use. So, able to easy to detect what issues are causing interference, whether it be rogue devices or that either students or instructors will bring into an environment and start to report wireless connectivity issues. So really, really awesome tools that I use on a daily basis for sure. This is a quick screenshot of just an actual environment where I captured or I leveraged the network overview tool and was able to just quickly see what type of wireless networks were in use, what channels were they using, what kind of utilization, how many clients were connected at the time. This was in a food court area, and you can kind of see there's like a little Roku there that is not part of our campus network. Someone must have deployed a Roku in probably one of the conference rooms. And so, as it relates to classrooms, leveraging the tools to being able to kind of help you understand the wireless environment is keen. And the Sidekick is able to do that. You're able to simulate different types of deployments in the AI Pro design software and also be able to just simulate maybe upgrades or different types of vendors if you're considering doing like Wi-Fi 6 or Wi-Fi 7. If you have a floor plan that you can import, you can you can design and hopefully get an idea of what that would look like in the real world. And then obviously supplement that with some sort of like survey. But um, as I mentioned before, like classrooms, we're seeing a huge demand in leveraging the wireless in our classrooms by lectors or instructors, and a lot of the times it's to the detriment of the wireless network. We have lots of vendors that reach out to our instructors and want to sell, different types of applications that are out in the cloud, and so we'll get, contacted and we'll get receive tickets suggesting that the wireless is terrible in one environment, and when we realize that they're utilizing it in a way that it was never intended to, it speaks to just, instructors and people in general not really truly understanding how wireless works and thinking that one access point can serve up 200 students, which is not something that I would highly recommend. And we'll talk a little bit about capacity and design, but this is one of our classrooms that has a is well equipped for the more dense type of uh, classes, and is one that I will show you in the next slide, does get utilized. This we had an instructor here that was trying to leverage an AI proctored exam. And interestingly enough, they requested that we come out to assist with any wireless connectivity issues, and it actually turned out that the wireless performed perfectly fine. The issues that they ran into was mostly associated with the actual cloud software. But it kind of speaks to kind of some of the challenges that we face across campus, where we're constantly trying to prove the wireless innocence and or having to refresh designs because as more and more students and instructors are leveraging the wireless for interaction, whether it be quizzes or exams, um, we have to be mindful of just, how they're using the wireless and other types of interfering devices like AV equipment and all kinds of things. So I do want to just show you a recent picture of that I took this last week of the same classroom. Um, and you can definitely see just how packed it is. We talk a lot about, how many wireless devices every student carries, and this does speak to that. We have laptops, we have desktops, we have looks like a student passing out on the table there. I hope she's okay. Um, Things like that is really commonplace in a lot of our classrooms. Not everyone leverages the wireless in the same way, which is unique, but it's a constant challenge for us to be able to make sure that, the wireless has the capacity and density for whatever the utility is. Cool. All right. So, as it relates to wall materials and design and aesthetics, this is the oldest building on our campus. We call it Old Main. And as you can kind of tell from the picture there, the exterior is all sandstone. And kind of my tips and tricks here for you all is just making sure that when you're designing, that you design for the materials that are actually in use, and to help you accurately reflect what the wireless environment looks like in the real world. I will say that this used to be probably a bigger concern in the past, but Ekahau has made it so easy now to where you really don't even have to think twice about it. Whether you have a floor plan or not, you can just take, oh, well, I should say you still need a floor plan, but whether you have a floor plan with walls drawn, let me put it that way, or not, you can still take the sidekick out. And if you do a proper survey and measure both sides of the walls, which I will kind of show a little demo later on, you can get pretty close to what the attenuation of that material will be without actually having drawn it in. But this speaks to, just the diversity of our university and how different types of buildings have to be designed, differently because of the architecture, the layout, all these things that you kind of want to just bake into your design, including, your LCMI and all those things. So let me show you a quick demo of just how quickly you can take AI Pro Online and just start from scratch with just a PDF, how I can create a single floor plan for the same building that I just showed you, uh, using AI Pro Online, the AI software to draw on the walls, and just get a quick at a glance view of a wireless deployment. Now, this is sped up to just be 2 times faster for the webinar, but you can kind of tell it's not that hard. You just need to make sure that you're setting your scale, obviously, and then letting AI do the magic on the back end, kind of detecting the walls, which is about to finish up here. And you have basically a relatively accurate depiction of what that environment would look like. Now, clearly, you would have to validate that and take your survey, the sidekick out to do a site survey just to be sure. But even adding access points, like it's really cool, really easy, and you have a wide variety of selection to choose from. So um, I'm just making a couple adjustments there, and then that looks pretty good. And there you go. Give you a nice little 3D view of what the first floor of that building would look like in just a few seconds. So really neat if you want to simulate your existing network or maybe future, Wi-Fi 6E, Wi-Fi 7, Wi-Fi 8 access points. Definitely leverage the Ekahau tools to help you with your designs. So we talked about exterior aesthetics. I should probably have mentioned that, being a historic building does limit us on what we're able to do as far as modifications. So there's not a lot as it relates to mounting that we can do without seeking approval. And this slide actually is kind of speaking a little bit more to the spirit of that, where if you look at the ballroom as a whole, you can kind of see that there are no access points, and it's kind of hard to see, but there's no access points that are visible when you walk into this ballroom, which is a room that's attached to the building that I just showed you a minute ago. But for better or for worse, for aesthetic reasons or otherwise, the previous wireless engineer thought it would be a good idea to install the access points above the ceiling, which is very common. I would not recommend designing it this way. And if you squint hard enough at the smaller image, you can kind of see that the access point is not only above the ceiling grid, but it's actually tucked into the vent. That's that you can kind of see on the larger image on the right-hand side there. Um, as you will learn in some of the in attending some of the training classes about design 101, you definitely want to make sure that you expose the access points or bring them below the ceiling grids. Do not, add attenuation to the access points, and you probably don't you want to install an omnidirectional at such a high height. You want to definitely leverage external antennas or directional access points, and work with your building managers to figure out, what is appropriate. What do they find appealing as far as aesthetics go, and what you can kind of get away with while still providing the coverage for the capacity of that environment. So this one gave me a good chuckle, and I just wanted to share, some of our blunders. But um, I didn't do it. I promise. And I would never do that. I only design good wireless networks. So this is once you do have a good wireless network, then the next step is to do a site survey. And so when you do have an environment where you deployed access points and you want to just check to see, get a feel for, what the wireless looks like, it's very crucial for you to be able to perform a good survey. And what defines a good survey versus a bad survey is just making sure you walk every corner of that building that you expect wireless to function. And in this case, just to show you how easy it is to take an iPad, slap on your Sidekick, walk just one room, just to give you an idea. This is a space that is near food court for our university and is one that I've performed several site surveys, but recently did a refresh with installing external access points to kind of help create more microcells within the room and help with the capacity and the density of an environment, because this is a large conference room with accordion walls that can open up or kind of create sections of conference rooms, smaller conference rooms within it. And so we took it upon ourselves to refresh it. I did a site survey, and now that I've done it, I can come back to my office, sit down, grab a cup of coffee, and just kind of start looking at all the various visualizations to kind of make sure that the wireless design met my expectations. Now, some of you critics out there might notice that I haven't walked the entirety of the floor. Good on you. I would definitely want to make sure I walk into every single corner of this building if I have access to it. But this is actually a very busy building, as it is our food court, so it's open year round. Okay, some of our more dense environments, including our auditorium and our stadium, which I'll show you in the next few slides, you want to make sure that you're accounting for capacity. And I kind of mentioned in the previous slide, to do that, you want to create microcells, or you want to create sections using external antennas to help, distribute the load in these types of environments. But this one in particular is our Audrey Auditorium, and is where the Flagstaff Symphony Orchestra performs, and has other live events, but is another space where kind of aesthetics create a limiting factor on where we can mount, and also, the height of the room and all kinds of different types of variables that limit us on being able to, reinforce the wireless. But But we were asked to do so, and what we decided to do, you can kind of see in the top image there that there are some stadium grade access points on either side of the stage. Those are not speakers. That's actually the Marlin Cisco C9104, and they are kind of pointing both towards the bottom section of the seating area and also the top section as well as the balcony. Um, Not necessarily going to be ideal or perfect for just for capacity in this environment. If we were to really do it right, we probably need to add a little bit more access points. But working in a university environment, we do our best with the tools at hand and come up with creative solutions to make the wireless better. And the next demo, you'll kind of see, kind of also showcasing the elevated flooring that Ekahau now has, which I've been really, really excited to finally get access to. Um, you can kind of really, design and get an idea of what the wireless coverage would look like, even with a type of sloped floor environment. And this is me just kind of demoing. I've already kind of done all the legwork. I just wanted to showcase it a little bit, but how easy it is for you to be able to take that space, same space, add your access points, and then look at it from a 3D perspective to just to kind of get a feel on what it would look like. I would then recommend going in and doing a site survey to validate that the design meets those requirements or matches what the software suggests. But really, really cool to kind of just see, you know, the sloped seating, and I think that's just pretty freaking awesome. I'm not going to lie. So there's other types of venues, obviously, that you would use this for, like stadiums, and we'll talk about that next. But I wanted to kind of showcase that and give you guys a quick little demo of that environment with the same access points that I depicted before. Uh, I think in actually doing a survey, it was pretty close to what the actual design suggested. But if it doesn't, you can go back and make some tweaks. So really, really cool.
Hey,
This
Larry,
is
just quick
awesome.
question focusing on the larger auditorium areas like this. If you had a very large area, um, what would your thought process be, or how would you address kind of load balancing clients across a large seating area like this? What strategy would you leverage? Antennas, features built into the controller, or the access points? What do you do in that situation?
Yeah. I've attended other webinars where there's varying differences in opinion on how you would approach it. You have a few options to play with, like 802.11v, if you want to let the controller kind of help distribute the load. I think I kind of side with things that Matt and others have said in the past, using external antennas, distributed across the room, assuming that you can get away with, the mounting locations, even if it's on the wall there, and helping kind of focus the wireless for those antennas and those access points in specific areas, and then just naturally allowing clients to walk in and roam to the different access points. So it can be tricky, but you mostly are limited by, the mounts and the mounting locations. But I would suggest letting the client decide, letting the client make the decision, as opposed to forcing the client or doing something on the controller side, because that could be met with varying degrees of success. And uh, usually, if you nudge the client in the right direction, they do make the best choice for themselves.
Brilliant.
And I learned that from you guys. So I not to all right. So now similar to in the stadium type of environment, this again, kind of like what Troy's suggesting, there's lots of philosophies when it comes to designing for a stadium. And I'm not going to suggest that I do it perfectly. This is actually a project that's still in the process of being completed. But as it relates to the options that are available to you as a wireless engineer, you have, the ability to either decide on, would you like to provide coverage from underneath the seat? I've seen awesome presentations where people have been successful in doing that. You can do wireless coverage from the actual handrails along the steps. And or you can kind of provide wireless coverage from above. And um, that's actually the approach that we decided to take when we were asked to reinforce the wireless for our stadium. Um, Skydome, as what we call our stadium, is a multi-venue type of space where we have things like commencement or graduation, to American football, to concerts and even robotic events. And it's a particularly difficult environment to design for simply because of the utility of it and all the different types of devices that come together in these spaces, including just the amount of attenuation that our bodies create when the seats fill up. So I thought it best, kind of considering all that stuff, maybe we should just provide coverage from the top down and trying to figure out where we can mount our access points, which going back to the previous slide, we decided to kind of go with the Cisco Marlin, which I know is kind of their older stadium grade access point. They now actually have I think the 91, was it 97? I could be butchering that, but they have a new, more modern access point that is purpose built for these types of environments. And they're fantastic access points that are able to handle the density with relative ease, but they also weigh about 15 pounds. And something that you don't necessarily think about as a designer is just what are the limitations that you're working with as far as installation? Usually, a lot of people like to outsource that, but we have a team in-house that actually does a lot of our implementations and installations. I can't underestimate how valuable it is to work with those folks to understand, what you're able to design for and then adjust your designs based on those limitations. And what we found in practice here is the access point was very performant, had no issues, did what we wanted it to do. But unfortunately, where we wanted to install them, which was that catwalk, which if you saw right below the flag there, there's a catwalk where all those banners are hanging from. And uh, that that structure is free floating, so it's just kind of hanging from the roof and has a weight limitation. So you also don't want to be creating like safety concerns or risks by, to our patrons that are attending some of these events by overloading or exceeding the capacity of what that catwalk can handle. So that for that reason and for other budgetary reasons, we weren't able to complete the project as is. So we decided to kind of leave these access points above the press boxes using a stand or a sled, which is basically a mast attached to a platform. And we still to this day have these deployed and it has improved the wireless coverage immensely. But in order to kind of complete the perfect design, the full design, we still need to come up with a solution on how we can access and mount these access points to the ceiling. Um, but unfortunately, I think as you kind of see from the previous slide, it's an enclosed stadium, and those beams it's an all wooden structure, which would require a bit of effort and a lift to be able to mount them, further up to the roof. But it's a project that I'm definitely going to continue to champion, and I'm hopeful we'll be able to complete one day. This actually was one of the reasons, and some of you might recall seeing this in a previous slide or previous webinar with Ekahau. You might have seen this layout. I actually recreated it myself using the elevated sloped flooring, just to kind of help drive home the point. If you want to help validate your designs, just having that, comparing the left image to the right image, which is the same image, it gives you a level of confidence that your wireless deployment is going to do what you had designed for, or in this case, designing for capacity is going to be able to handle all the patrons that visit the stadium. So another really neat use case for having the sloped elevated flooring. Okay, I think probably one of the most common challenges that we see across campus is not just design, but chasing down wireless issues. And without the right tools, without having, my sidekick, I don't know how anyone else would address it. I don't think vendor tools cut it. When if you have some sort of like uh, NMS tool that can kind of monitor, the health of your wireless network, it doesn't compare to actually having a real world, in the moment capture or example that you can work from. And that's where, having just an iPad and a sidekick comes in handy. So I use, the Analyzer app to be able to detect, RF neighbors, rogue devices, detect, how many access points are deployed in an environment and should we make a design adjustment for that. Um, I would highly recommend maybe moving access points out of hallways. I think that's been said before on these webinars, but I can't understate the value of that enough. Um, and and considering that we have students that live on campus year round, mind you, they have a tendency of bringing in microwaves, which adds interference to the wireless infrastructure for our campus. And inversely, in our academic space, we have lots of instructors that have shared printers or, enterprise grade type printers with wireless automatically enabled. And all of these things, when you walk into an environment, just contribute to, what I have here is the co-channel contention, which I think I heard recently in another webinar that may not necessarily be a bad thing. I would tend to agree, but also as, administrators of the wireless network, we want to do our best in being able to detect those interfering devices, identify what channels are being um, those devices are located on, and then doing our best to just uh, either move our wireless deployment, accommodate that and move around those channels, or come up with a dynamic or static channel plan that makes sense for your organization. Tweaking your radio resource management, but being able to see it live with Ekahau and whether it be the network overview or what have you, um, is super valuable and able to make those decisions quite easily. So here's a quick demo. This is a gross exaggeration, but it is a really cool way of showing how to leverage the spectrum analysis tool. And this is me just turning on a microwave and having my sidekick nearby. If I had a wireless deployment that was leveraging the 2.4 gigahertz frequency band, this would be almost unusable. I mean, you can kind of see how the entire spectrum is just filled. I didn't put the sidekick in the microwave. I was next to the microwave, but even still, like just seeing how much interference created by this microwave is definitely something that I have seen in the field with our students in their resident space because they change the layout of their rooms. They'll wheel and microwave right underneath an access point and think nothing of it until, we receive reports that their Xbox, PlayStation is struggling on the wireless, which again does speaks to it's not necessarily the wireless issue. It's just we have a source of interference that we need to mitigate. Um, so gross exaggeration, obviously not designing for 2.4 gigahertz in a university like this. Uh, this is actually a picture of our nursing program. And I wanted to just kind of mention how, you can't always predict what's going to be in an environment or a space. And in these nursing programs, we have mannequins um, that are managed remotely via a wireless connection. So what will happen is an instructor will actually have inside this mannequin, in the abdomen of this mannequin, there's a wireless router, and there's a behind where I took this picture, there's a glass, a one-way view glass, where the instructor will manage the mannequin and create different types of symptoms in order to educate the students. And that we had no idea that was installed or that they needed that type of wireless connectivity. And if you kind of notice that right above the mannequin on the right-hand side, you'll see our access point deployed, which is probably a less than ideal spot for this type of space where you have all kinds of different, IoT or sensors for this environment. You'll also notice that there's a camera. In this case, that's a wired camera on the left-hand side and attached on the ceiling. But if that was a wireless camera, these are all things that we kind of have to work around as a university and maybe design around to be still accommodating, but provide wireless connectivity in this space, even though there might be rogue devices or interfering devices. This is another example of something that we have on campus where these little robots deliver food and drinks to our students, and they roam wirelessly across campus. And outside buildings, they just kind of use GPS to kind of to navigate. But this is a building where the group that has deployed these units, operate from and installed a wireless router in order to provide connectivity to these units while they're charging. You can kind of see the three in the background there. While they're at the charging station, they rely on wireless to receive updates. And this is, again, something that uh, hindered our wireless connectivity inside the building, and we were not made aware of, but is another just type of, just to drill home the point of like just the randomness that we see across campus and all the various technologies that are coming together in these types of environments. All right, client analysis. So Troy and I spoke on this earlier. I have a quick demo just to kind of showcase what I was talking about there. In the demo, I'm going to showcase how you can use client analysis to just be able to detect a device, whether it be an LCMI or otherwise, and just see what capabilities it has. So in the demo that I have, this is a television that's in my conference room that we use to cast our screen from our laptops wirelessly. And so it's basically creating a point-to-point connection, almost like a wireless router and a client between the television and your laptop. And should this become a problem, or should you need to like add this device to your wireless network and you didn't have any of the vendor documentation for this specific client? This is a really easy and quick way to be able to get that data without having to go online, pull up a data sheet and figure out like what standards does it support, what features does it support. I mentioned if you wanted like to identify whether a client supports 802.11r for roaming or 802.11k or has an issue with those supported standards, this is a really nice way to be able to detect those and then go back to the drawing board in your design and design around those limitations or configure a controller to enable or disable certain features like that. All right. And so again, expectation is that the wireless remain functional year round. Um, Students come into campus and bring a wide variety of devices. And this is kind of where having multiple SSIDs can help you in accommodating all the various devices you might see on your network. I think in part is understanding the kind of clients that you expect to see on your wireless network and designing for that, but also having a fallback, which in our case, we use our guest network to capture a lot of the PlayStation, Roku's. There's a wireless lamp that we've helped connect, and even like monitoring sensors, like wireless. I think there was a wireless baby sock to help monitor um, the infant's, I guess like certain metrics for that infant that they just kind of wanted to have monitored for a family that was living in here in one of our research departments. Like these are all things that we come across and need to onboard. And the key point here is just a lot of these devices require some sort of like consumer grade WPA2 personal type security, and that is not always compatible with enterprise grade security. So we have to be accommodating and being able to provide this, some connectivity to those devices regardless, and to the best of our ability, while also having a secure network for our assets as an organization and creating a separation so that there's no malicious, attacks coming from within our university. So it's a careful balance. I guess that's really what I'm trying to say here is it's a constant battle, and it's a balance of just trying to have a secure environment with the latest features, security features enabled, but also being able to accommodate, any BYOD or IoT devices, as we have several research departments on campus, and every single one of them just they think they know how wireless works, or they don't think enough how bringing such a device in an environment like this may impact others. And I'm constantly reminding instructors that, hey, we're prioritizing students' education first. If there is a device that's creating some interference, we'll do our best to kind of like work with them to help work around those parameters, or at least give them a certain space that will not conflict or overlap with, the spectrum or the channels that we're currently using and operating and offering for our students, because wireless is a shared spectrum. We do our best to be able to accommodate, but at the same time, we have to share the space. So it's a fine line of just walking. It's a fine line to walk. I mean, really, at the end of the day. And this is kind of where I mentioned earlier, Wi-Fi always gets the blame. Um, Talk about expectations. So there's students will get upset about the wireless being down before anything else. We had an example where one of our dorm rooms lost power, and the first thing that a student reported to us was that, why is the wireless down? And never thinking twice about, well, wireless still needs power to function and all the networking equipment in that space. But it speaks to something I wanted to share with you all. I'm hoping you all can relate, but it's having the right tools to being able to prove the wireless innocence, as Matt kind of suggested earlier. If you're in a hotel and you're having connectivity issues, it's not necessarily always the wireless. It could be latency, it could be DHCP, it could be DNS, it could be a firewall issue. And our team luckily has visibility to all components, so we are able to, diagnose and troubleshoot those types of problems. But it's interesting how, how often wireless gets the blame and very little credit. So just to kind of wrap things up, here are the best practices that I would recommend. I'll kind of walk through some of that, and hopefully I'm doing good on time. But basically, I would highly recommend, if you can, create separate SSIDs, separating different frequencies, 2.4 from 5, and then playing with maybe different security types, WPA2 versus WPA3. I would highly recommend designing for 20 megahertz channels in these dense spaces because not a lot of people are really looking for throughput. They're really looking for just connectivity and having and taking advantage of the clean air is how to address that. If you are considering 6 gigahertz or 6 gigahertz upgrade, whether it be Wi-Fi 6E or Wi-Fi 708, definitely leverage that spectrum because it will help you in your designs and alleviate a lot of co-channel interference problems. I mentioned before, leveraging directional antennas, especially because of, mounting limitations and also helping create microcells within a classroom to kind of, distribute the load, as me and Troy were talking about during the auditorium slide. Can't recommend that enough. That is something I have taken the approach of in all of our classrooms and has immensely improved. Just even swapping out without maybe adding additional access points, just going from omnidirectionals to directionals will have a massive improvement for your organization. Getting APs out of hallways because I mentioned this earlier, and the reason why you would do that is basically the access points will tune to each other, not to the client. So if they tune their power levels down, it basically reduces the connectivity of the client, and that's going to have a negative impact to the performance. So get them out of the hallways. You know, get them into the rooms if you can. That's usually the easiest approach, and disable 2.4 gigahertz wherever possible. I will say if you have flexible radios, if your APs have multiple antennas or um, are able to use multiple radios at the same frequency, that's something definitely to consider as part of your design because that will improve the connectivity, at least the make better use of the airspace and reduce kind of interference overall. And then adjusting the minimum and maximum transmit powers. This is something that you can do on the controller side. But for our environment, as you know, we have classrooms that fill up with people. And so we have schedules where classrooms are in use, and then there's periods of time where classrooms are not in use. Having a consistent power level, if not a static power level, would be ideal in those environments so that, RRM or radio resource management is not trying to catch up, while students are filling the room and opening, their device, opening their laptops to use the wireless. You definitely don't want to be behind the curve on waiting for the access points to adjust, whether it be for their power levels or for interference, if there's, something detected on a specific channel. And that speaks to the next item there. A static channel plan, uh, typically in those very dense environments, is probably going to be your best bet. Albeit for our scale, we still leverage radio resource management just because it'd be really hard to manage, the channels for every single device. If we have 3,600 devices across campus, there's no way that we can manage it all. But in those very dense niche areas, I would certainly recommend doing so. And then just making sure you're doing, your site surveys. Make sure that you're understanding the layout of the building, that you're understanding the materials that you're working with. Ekahau, Sidekick makes it so easy to do that. So make sure you're just accounting for it. And lastly, um, mistakes do happen. Um, I, for one, am still learning. I'm still constantly evolving and adjusting and tuning my designs whenever possible. But communicate with your installers. I've had the liberty of being able to work with my installers in person. Um, Sometimes we make mistakes together. Sometimes, things happen. But working in a university, you're constantly being challenged with thinking outside the box, thinking creatively, and doing our best to work around, the limitations, whether it be aesthetics or otherwise. So that's it for me. I thank you guys for your time. I appreciate it. I hope you find the content interesting. I know I always do, and I love attending these webinars. Um, I can't thank the Ekahau team enough for inviting me to present before you today. I think, they produce such great content in the past, and I want to personally thank, Matt and everyone, Troy, Dale, Stu. Thank you guys so much for bringing me back to at least share our campus with the world, and hopefully, some of these tips will help you guys create better wireless networks, and yeah, we'll see you on the next webinar, hopefully.
It was our absolute pleasure to have you on with us today, Larry, to share your insights, your stories, and your experience with our listeners on this webinar. I think you absolutely smashed it with your
Thank
examples
you.
and your
Thanks,
demos
man.
that show why it's important to consider many different variables to make sure APs are placed in the right spots. And I know that there's been a handful of questions that have come up in the Q&A. I know Stu has some of those lined up. So if we have a few moments here, we'd like to see if we can just ask you some more questions to get some more insights and leverage your experience.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
let's cover a couple of them. But first off, hats off to you, Larry, and I'm going to put that there. But
Thanks, guys.
well done, my friend.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, we had some great, interesting questions here. I got a few lined up, and I think we answered them as we went along. But there was a couple ones in here. I got well. First off, we'll start just kind of back into the last couple topics. There is how did you determine the down tilt value for your directional antennas? And I think and the question came up right when you were focusing on the stadium as you're putting them in that catwalk.
Yeah. Yeah. So we worked with the vendor quite extensively on that specific project. And I guess to answer the question directly, leveraging a laser is handy because when you're that far away, I think it was like about a 90-foot drop from the catwalk to the seating below. It's hard. It's hard to know what the right angle is, and it's easy to simulate it, but when you're out there, you're kind of having to play off of what you're mounting to, and then what the articulation is available to you with that specific mount. Um, the good news is that that specific access points, if you're buying like the 9104 or the next generation of that, it comes with a mount that has pretty good articulation. So you're able to kind of size it and angle it the way where you want it to be. But another feature of that access point or that stadium grade access point, at least from Cisco, and I'm sure other vendors have something comparable, is you're able to offset the radios inside the actual access point. So using software, obviously, it's able to offset either a 10 degree, 20 degree, or 30 degree, which allows you, if an installer were to install it incorrectly, you can kind of maybe work around it. You can kind of like adjust and tune it a little bit. But for me, I think just having a laser, trying to kind of target where you want it to be and kind of center it, right? You want to get it at the middle. You want to still create, even in those really dense stadium seating type of deployments, you want to make sure that you're at least getting it centered so that you create an even roaming experience between access points in different sections or in the same section.
Yeah, that's definitely a challenge, and to do that, and it's really good kind of see the kind of thought process. I got one more, if that's okay, Troy. I've got another one here. This popped up kind of twice here. Did you what the question revolves around? What did you find around rate limiting? With airtime fairness and whatnot in classrooms.
Yeah.
This question comes up a lot, right?
Yes.
Is
Yes.
should we be rate limiting or not? Right? I mean, it is a big question. I mean, I'd be interested to hear what your take is on that.
I I would reference a really great um, video that Jim Palmer, I think, did a while back for maybe the WLPC conference, and would recommend not doing rate limiting. I would suggest we definitely don't, from a university, do any rate limiting whatsoever, whether it be for our guests or for our authenticated clients. And that's mostly because, it's just better for the clients to get on and off the air. You don't need to necessarily hang up the airtime with just a client trying to send a certain amount of traffic. Let them get on, let them get off as quickly as you can. And as a university, we fortunate enough to have 100 gig bandwidth pipes to the internet. So we don't have really limitations as it relates to just maybe a smaller business might have with a smaller internet circuit. So it's not really a concern for us.
Yeah, because then even when you get that roaming here, that goes into one of the other questions we had. There was an influx of roaming of students transferring classes, right? It seems to, would it bring the network down? Would it shouldn't, right? Because you're as long as you've properly planned that.
That's actually a really great question. We've had issues not with the wireless when it came to that, like students roaming from, let's say, academics building to the neighboring building that's where the food court's located, and that influx of just IPs and clients moving. It's actually been more of a problem on our NMS or our identity management system, our Cisco ICE deployment,
Ah,
where it has difficulties managing that, and as well as DHCP and IP pools. Um, because that change is so sudden that you'll definitely see an impact in performance. But over the years, we've gotten better. We've done upgrades and we've done like fine tuning in our DHCP servers to accommodate for that kind of stuff.
excellent. Dale, I'll pass it over to you. I don't know if you had anything there on your side.
Yeah, one more question that's outstanding. It asks Larry, how do you deal with IoT devices at the university that may only be capable of pre-shared key? Further, are you able to accommodate them within your four SSIDs?
Yes. So what we try to do is we use Cisco ICE and we use Mac authentication bypass. So what we try and do is kind of like when you come to a campus like ours and you connect to a guest network and you have to accept like a policy and then you're just on, or hotels are like this very much. Maybe the back end's slightly a little different, but what we try and do is we'll register those devices, the MAC addresses of those devices within our Cisco ICE deployment. And once they once they try to connect, they should automatically be able to connect to the wireless infrastructure without, going through the acceptable use policy or any of that, or having a PSK requirement. Um, Certain devices work in that with using Mac authentication bypass, but we found that not every device does, and that is something that I think I'm going to be considering in the near future as a way to accommodate for those niche devices. I think I have a way that we can, have a PSK, either whether it be a separate SSID or the same SSID across campus to accommodate things like, um, oh, what would be an example of that? Certain IoT devices just have trouble with that exchange that they won't connect whatsoever. And so having a PSK will allow those niche devices to join our guest network. And I would still say like keep them separate from, keep any IoT device separate from your actual enterprise secure network.
Thank you.
All right. Are there any more questions that we have queued up? Or did that
I
cover everything?
I think that was it. I don't know if you want to answer this one. Was there any if you can answer this, are you guys using big pools of big subnets for Wi-Fi clients?
That's actually a good question. We don't. I know there's design philosophies around that. My concern would be like just how, the broadcast, nature of having such a large subnet or large pool. We actually divide a lot of our buildings into different networks. Each building is its own unique subnet. But if you plan on or considering, I would definitely be, cautious just because, that's a massive ARP table, that's a massive broadcast domain. You definitely don't want to reduce and impact performance with, device discovery or anything like that. There are other ways and knobs that you can tune to kind of accommodate for that kind of stuff, but I would recommend maybe sticking with smaller subnets as a whole. And I kind of want to just thank everyone again. I want to thank you guys mostly because I know how much work and effort goes into these webinars. I appreciate you guys for putting all the great content out there. I think it has immensely helped my career. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't from the support from the wireless community and specifically Mr. Matt Starling. I can't thank him enough for the support that he's given me in my certifications and in my career. I'm one of you guys. I'm one of the sidekicks. I'm always just in the webinar attending these events and I enjoy them immensely. Thank you guys so much. I can't tell you what this means to me to be here to share the stage with that Keith Parson has taken with, all the great names out there. I'm so overwhelmed and thank you so much.
Larry, you've absolutely smashed it. I don't know if I'm coming through or not, but it keeps breaking up for me. So
We can hear you,
you
man.
did okay. Well, you did a fantastic job today. I've been really enjoying watching people's response in the chat saying that this is like one of the best webinars. You did such a great job.
Yes, that's what I
Um,
was hoping.
yeah, like people are absolutely loving the content that you provided us today. Obviously, I'm lucky enough to know you quite well now personally, Larry. many a vegan lunch or dinner together in different locations. So I knew what you was going to deliver was going to be excellent today. But to see the feedback from everyone
Thanks, man.
watching it, because I know how much time and effort you put into this, and you was a bit nervous and stressed and worried about how it was going to be received. So hopefully you're
Just a
going
little
to
bit.
sleep well tonight, Larry, knowing that you've delivered a fantastic
Yeah.
webinar to all of the guests today. And yeah, you
Yeah.
absolutely smashed it. So thank you so much
Thank you,
for the
man.
work that you.
I value our friendship, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna pass it back to Troy and Stu because before I my latency kicks in and kicks me out again. But a huge thank you to you, Larry, and the rest of the team today.
And
Thanks,
I
everyone
just
in the
want to
chat.
echo that sentiment. Thank you, Larry, for joining us today. The presentation was absolutely fantastic. I think your ability to convey your experience, your insights, to share your thoughts with the audience was very well received, and that was very clear in the chat and the feedback that we've received so far. To wrap things up, I do want to point out that our next webinar is scheduled for February 26th. We'll be talking about mastering Ekahau, some of the new features, best practices, and some little hints and teasers to what's coming soon. I do want to point out that, again, it's scheduled for February 26th, but we are making a change. We will be starting 2 hours earlier than we normally do, right? So we'll be starting at 10 a.m. Eastern time on February 26th. So scan the QR code there or hit our website to register and get that into your calendar. And we look forward to seeing you next time on our next webinar. Everyone have a good rest of your day.